Hello, my name is Ashley Davis, and today I will be discussing how the brain supports reading comprehension and what this means for instruction in our classrooms. Specifically, I will address three main questions. What is the role of the brain in reading comprehension? How do we teach children to comprehend what they are reading? And how we ensure students understand both the words in a text and the knowledge behind those words, often referred to as word and world knowledge. Results from researchers such as Hirsch, Willingham, Brown and DeWitt, and Keene and Zimmerman shows that comprehension is much more complex than simply reading words on a page. It involves multiple cognitive processes, knowledge systems, and instructional practices all working together. Okay, so what is reading comprehension? Reading comprehension is the process of constructing meaning from text. When students read, they're not just recognizing words. They're actively combining several types of knowledge to understand what the text is saying. So this is going to include your vocabulary knowledge, background knowledge about the topic, reasoning and inferencing, and strategic thinking about the text. So readers constantly connect what they're reading with what they already know. In other words, comprehension is not something that is going to automatically happen after decoding. It is an active process where the reader builds meaning from the text. So, a student could read 150 words a minute. Every word is read correctly. Every word is said correctly. It's beautiful. But if that student does not have that vocabulary knowledge and that background knowledge about the text, they're not going to comprehend it. They're going to struggle. So students need to have that type of knowledge at the very least to understand what the text is saying. So, before we talk about instruction, it helps to understand what's happening in the brain when students read. So this short video explains how reading activates multiple areas of the brain and why reading must be explicitly taught.
How does the brain learn to read? We're living in the information age. Being a strong, confident reader is more important than ever. But the brain isn't meant to read. Humans have not evolved to naturally acquire reading and writing skills. We have to learn how to read. So, how does that happen? Let's find out. This is the left hemisphere of the brain, the part most essential for language and reading. When you look at words on a page, the brain processes it from back to front. It starts in the occipital lobe, goes to the ventral areas, and explodes into other areas in the left hemisphere. So, what does that mean? Let's take a closer look. This is the occipital lobe. It is the part that processes visual information. So, as you see letters and symbols when you read, this part is activated first. After the brain processes the visual information, the word formation area, or the letterbox, is activated. The letterbox is where we store our knowledge of letters. It is highly specialized for recognizing written words and letters. The activation of the letterbox triggers a burst of activity, activating two networks. The first network is related to the pronunciation and articulation of words or sounds. The second network is related to the meaning of words. We know that these networks of sounds and meaning already exist for people whose brains have developed normally. Reading consists of connecting vision and language, so we need to create an interface between the two. We can gain insight on how to do that by looking at how the brain changes as a person learns to read. One of the biggest changes is the letterbox area becoming activated. People who do not know how to read do not have an activated letterbox. When the letterbox becomes activated, that means that representation of speech sounds becomes more precise. So a big part of learning to read is connecting individual speech sounds to different letters. This can be seen in the brain. The higher someone's reading ability, the more fiber tracts we can see in the brain that connect these areas. This bundle is involved in connecting the letters to the sounds. When you hear a sound, you can also think about its letters. So the anatomy of the brain is literally changed as a person learns to read. So what does this mean for teaching? The brain processes every single letter and does not look at the whole shape. Fluent readers process letters in a word at the same time. It happens in parallel. The brain is not looking at the whole word or the whole shape. The brain processes every letter. This is true across all languages. So, teaching letter-sound correspondences is essential. We need to use explicit instruction methods that strengthen the neural pathways in the brain. This allows students to become strong and successful readers. So, what does that mean? Let's look at this example. B, A, T, but. B, A, T, but. First, the phonemes, or sounds, were explicitly segmented and blended. Next, an explicit connection between sounds and letters was shown. This is one way to teach sound-symbol correspondences explicitly. This kind of method can strengthen the neural pathways in the brain. This way, a strong connection is made between the letterbox and the sound network. But that's not all that's needed to become a strong reader. There are a lot of interconnected strands, or parts, that come together when a person reads. This was visualized as a reading rope by Dr. Hollis Scarborough in 2001. And that's how the brain learns to read. What did you learn? How will it change the way you teach? And what do you still want to know? How does the brain learn to read?
Okay, so when students read, the brain coordinates several cognitive systems at the same time. Reading comprehension requires language processing, working memory, and background knowledge, and inferencing. Language processing allows readers to understand the vocabulary and sentence structure of the text. Working memory allows them to hold ideas in their mind while they continue reading. So at the same time, readers draw on their background knowledge and make inferences to connect ideas that are not directly stated in the text. So according to Siobhan and Flugel, there we go, and Knapp, these processes work together to allow readers to construct meaning from what they read. Before students can fully focus on comprehension, they must first develop strong decoding skills. Early readers spend a large amount of cognitive energy figuring out the words on the text. They spend a lot of time decoding, sounding out words, all of that. When decoding becomes automatic, readers no longer have to spend as much mental effort recognizing words. So this frees up working memory so that they can focus on understanding the meaning of the text. So Hirsch emphasizes that fluent decoding is essential because it allows the brain to focus on comprehension rather than on word recognition. So if they have that decoding skill, they can automatically decode. They don't have to think about it. It's fluent, and then they can focus on what the text is saying and what the words mean and the background knowledge they need. So this video shows how reading instruction actually changes the brain by developing neural pathways for language and comprehension.
What do we know about the complex process of learning to read? Surprisingly, a lot. Scientific research collected over the past 4 decades reveals what happens in the brain and what must happen in the classroom to enable skillful reading. Most children learn to walk and talk naturally without a lot of support from adults. But reading is different. Reading is not hardwired in the brain, and the neural pathways involved must be developed through successful instructional experiences. Let's look at the reading brain. The parts of the brain that allow us to process sounds and recognize visual images are already in place at birth in the left hemisphere. However, the phonological assembly region is not intact at birth. This is the part of the brain that allows us to connect speech sounds with visual images, such as letters, and enables reading. And it must be built through explicit, systematic phonics instruction and practice with decoding.
So, knowledge drives comprehension. One of the most consistent findings in reading research is that background knowledge plays a very critical role in comprehension. Students often struggle to understand a text not because they cannot read the words, but because they lack the knowledge about the topic. Daniel Willingham argues that knowledge is one of the strongest predictors of comprehension. When students have background knowledge. They are able to make connections, understand new information, and build meaning more effectively. So for example, in my 9th grade reading class, we were reading about Apollo 13. I asked the students what they knew about Apollo 13. None of them really knew. I showed them a picture of the spacecraft and they started connecting. Okay, this is about a spaceship. And then we started talking about Apollo 11 and how it made it to the moon. And then Apollo 13 was going to the moon, didn't quite make it because of issues on board. And so we were able to read about what happened on Apollo 13. And then when we watched the movie to kind of give them more information, they already had some background knowledge going into the movie to understand what was happening from what we read. So it's very important that students have that background knowledge, and it might take some scaffolding from the teachers to help with that. Inferencing is another essential part of reading comprehension. Authors often do not explain every idea directly, especially the more complex the text gets. Instead, readers must use clues from the text along with their background knowledge to fill in that missing information, which is why background knowledge is so important. So readers connect ideas across sentences, interpret implied meaning, and make predictions about what might happen next. Chauvin and Flugel and Knapp describe inferencing as a core component of comprehension because it helps readers connect information and build a deeper understanding of the text. And I know inferencing is a very, very hard concept for a lot of children, but if they have that background knowledge, it really helps. Teaching students to comprehend. So, because comprehension involves complex thinking processes, it must be explicitly taught and modeled for students. One of the most effective instructional strategies is the think aloud. During a think aloud, teachers model the thinking processes skilled readers use while reading. And I tell my 9th graders this all the time. You're already doing the thinking in your head, or at least you should be. I'm going to model what that should sound like. You might do it automatically and don't even realize you're doing it, but you need to make sure that you do realize you're doing it so that you can use that information to help you understand what you're reading. So during a think aloud model, teachers might pause while reading to ask questions, make predictions, or explain how they are interpreting the text. According to Keene and Zimmerman, this type of modeling helps students understand how readers actively construct meaning while they're reading. So I'm going to show you another video, an example of a think aloud. So think alouds allow teachers to model the thinking process skilled readers use while reading. Students hear how readers make predictions, ask questions, and monitor their understanding.
I like to teach comprehension strategies by using think-alouds. Think-alouds are when the teacher reads a text and draws attention to things that are going on in my mind. And things that I like to focus on are before reading strategies. So I have them posted in the classroom. So I have 2 posters that are focusing on before reading strategies. I have during reading strategies, and I have after reading strategies. And I'll introduce a text like this, which was one that we looked at the beginning of the year from our biography unit. And it's the story about Iqbal Masih, who is a child laborer from Pakistan. I'll ask the children, what's the purpose of reading the text? The purpose of reading the text is that it's part of our biography unit. What can you think about when we know that this is a biography? Well, it's going to probably be in chronological order, and something really important probably happened to this person, or this person did something really important, and that's why there's a biography about them. So the text form helps us, the purpose helps us. Text features are really important, and I'm really surprised sometimes that kids don't pay attention to them, so I try really as much as I can to draw their attention to it. So the title itself, The Story of Iqbal Masih, you know, it's going to be his story. It's going to be his life story. And there are aspects of text and important features that are really going to help you understand what's going on in the story, so pay attention to them. It's also a good strategy to pull up previous knowledge. So is there another story that we've covered? Is there something that you know about child labor around the world that's really going to help you understand this story? A couple of the strategies that I focus on for during reading are to summarize what you've learned so far. I also like to talk to the kids about things that aren't answered in the text yet that they might be wondering about. And in order to ensure that they're understanding, get them to retell or I retell or summarize what's gone on. And if I don't understand what's gone on or something's a little bit confusing, they have to go back and reread it, because that's a really good strategy for understanding. If they come across a word that they don't know, it's something that they can't just go past it. They have to try some strategies. So one of the strategies that I encourage them to use is to see if the word has a root. If it has a root and they know what the root means, think about a prefix or a suffix and how does that affect the meaning of the root. Think about the context. Maybe that can help you. If not, go to the dictionary. Figure it out. Another during reading strategy is to evaluate and ask questions about the story. And finally, when you get to the end of the story, it's really important to get the child to reflect upon what they have learned from the story. So to summarize it in their own words, and then I know that they've understood the story, and I can articulate, when I do a think aloud, I can articulate all of these for them so they see it modeled. And that's very helpful for the students. I like to
All right, so this type of modeling is going to help students develop their metacognition and understand how to actively construct meaning from the text. So before, during, after reading are all strategies we can use to help kids to think while they are reading. So students are often taught strategies such as predicting, questioning, summarizing, and then monitoring their understanding. These strategies can be helpful, but research shows they are not enough on their own. Willingham and Lovett explain that comprehension strategies act more as prompts for thinking rather than a transferable comprehension skill. In other words, strategies are just going to remind readers to slow down, ask questions, and think about what they're reading. However, true comprehension depends heavily on vocabulary knowledge and background knowledge. So this diagram illustrates Kish's construction integration model, which explains how readers build meaning while reading. The model shows that comprehension happens in two main phases: construction and integration. So first, at the bottom of the diagram, readers begin with words on the page. These words are processed to what the model calls a linguistic representation, meaning that the reader understands the vocabulary and the sentence structure. Next, during the construction phase, the brain begins forming a network of ideas based on the information in the text. So at this stage, readers are activating prior knowledge and experiences to connect ideas and generate meaning. As readers continue, these ideas expand into what the model calls an elaborated propositional network. This means that the reader is combining information from the text with their background knowledge and experiences. And then finally, during the integration phase at the top, the brain organizes, filters these ideas to create a coherent understanding of the text. So the result is what the model calls the final text representation, which is the reader's overall understanding of what they've read. So this model helps illustrate why background knowledge, vocabulary, and inferencing are so important for comprehension. Without these elements, it becomes much harder for readers to build and integrate meaning from the text. So at the bottom, you have the words. Construction phase is connecting ideas and background knowledge. And then the top is the integration, which is forming the complete understanding. So you're decoding your background knowledge and vocabulary, inferencing, complete understanding of the text. Understanding word and world knowledge. To fully understand a text, students must comprehend both the words and the knowledge behind the words. So word knowledge includes vocabulary, decoding skills, sentence structure, and fluency. The world knowledge includes background knowledge, the content knowledge, what they're reading about, and real world experiences. Hirsch argues that comprehension depends heavily on knowledge of both words and the world. So when students lack background knowledge, even simple texts can become difficult to understand. Instruction that builds word and world knowledge. So to help students build both word and world knowledge, teachers should provide opportunities to read complex text supported by strong instructional scaffolding. They're going to need that. Fisher and Fry emphasize that teachers should act as the primary scaffold by modeling thinking, asking questions, and guiding discussions. Students also benefit from reading across subjects, engaging in close reading, and participating in academic academic discussion. Research from Lupo and colleagues also shows that adolescents improve comprehension when they read frequently and engage deeply in text. So reading across subjects, especially in elementary school, getting that reading in science, social studies, English, all of those is definitely going to help students because it builds that background knowledge. Okay, let's sum it all up. So to summarize, reading comprehension is a complex process that involves multiple cognitive systems working together in the brain. Students must develop decoding skills, vocabulary knowledge, background knowledge, and inferencing abilities to understand what they read. Effective instruction includes modeling comprehension through think-alouds, building knowledge across subjects, and providing opportunities for students to engage with complex texts. Also, discussions. We want our kids to talk about what they're reading. Kids learn so much from their peers. So why not build that in? Ultimately, the more knowledge students build about language and the world, the better they will be able to understand what they read. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you got a lot of information that you needed from it. I know I enjoyed it. Thank you.